thousands and thousands of years ago. Nobody knows how many thousands of years ago. Some extraterrestrials arrived on our solar system. Our ancestors at that time were Stone Age people. They could not understand what was going on. And as a mistake, they believed that these extraterrestrials are some gods. We all know there are no gods. There's only one God, Allah. The rest we don't, it's all misunderstanding, misinterpreting. So our forefathers believed that these extraterrestrials were gods. So the gods, the so-called gods, entered into mythologies, into the legends, sometimes even parts of the old religion. And one of these extraterrestrials' name was Einoch. Now Einoch is the same figure which in Egyptian tradition is called Saurit, and in Greek tradition is called Hermes. Now, in old Egyptian tradition, there is one writer, Ibrahim Abdul al-Makrisi, who has written in his book Hittat that the Great Pyramid was not constructed by Cheops. The Great Pyramid was constructed by a pharaoh with the name of Saurit. And then he said, Saurit is the same which the Hebrew calls Einoch. And he knows exactly what he speaks about because he quotes all of Enoch's forefathers down 8th generation until to the Adam, until the beginning. So it was according to Al-Makrisi, it was Enoch. There is a book called the Book of Enoch. It's an old book, thousands and thousands of years old. And there Enoch describes when he was 12 years old, some being descended from the sky. He was afraid. Everyone was afraid. He fell down on his knees. And then some of the strange people, there were two of them, touched him and put him on his feet. And Enoch says there were two beings which were not human. I never saw them on earth. They did not breast like humans. Some of them said, young man, if you wish, we take you up to the firmament, to the sky, and we teach you. And the humans wish to go there. So they go up to the firmament, in reality to a spaceship, to a gigantic spaceship. Enoch learns the language of the strangers. He's there for many, many years. Later he descends on the planet Earth and comes back and go and back, etc. And they teach him also in astronomy, they teach him also in engineering. And he had the knowledge of constructing a pyramid because the teachers were the extraterrestrials.
There's also a man in teacher, his name is Imam Ahmad al-Hassan, and he says the same as what you're saying, and that's why it was so interesting. He makes a connection with Enoch and Osiris, and he says that the one who will open the pyramid again would be Osiris or Enoch, reincarnated. So I don't know if you heard something like that, or if the ancient Egyptians believed in reincarnation, maybe.
Well, in all of the old traditions, we had many of these visitors, and they studied the humans like ethnologists would do today. They learned the few language, they teach the humans, etc. Before they left our planet, they always promised we will return in a far future. This promise of return has become part of every old culture, including today's religion. You know, some roughly 400 years ago, Francisco Pizarro, he was the Spanish conqueror. He arrived for the first time in today's Peru. The natives, the Inca, they believed that he was the long-awaited God who returned finally. Of course, he was just a human, but they believed he was a God. The same thing in Central America. The Spanish came together, Diego de Landa came together with Moctezuma. Moctezuma was the ruler of the Aztecs. Even the ruler, the king, believed that the Spanish people are some visitors from the sky. They fell down on her knees. Again, for example, in the South Sea, far away, James Cook, the British explorer, he came for the first time to Hawaii. What happened? The native believed that he's the long-awaited God who returned. It's always the same situation. So this expectation of returning of somebody is not a Christian, neither a Muslim invention. It existed a long time ago, and we still have it today. I was educated as a Christian. We Christians believe that one day Jesus would return. I know the great Muslim society is waiting the returning of the Mahdi. We know the Jewish community is waiting for Messiah. The Buddhist is waiting for the Buddha. We all wait for the return. Coming back to Enoch, before he left, he gave all his books, which the extraterrestrials dictated him, to his son Methuselah, with the order, and now my son Methuselah, I give you all these books written by your father's hand. Keep them carefully for the generations after the great flood. And then his son asked his father, Enoch, will I see you again? And Enoch says, no, when I will return, thousands of years have passed, but I will return. So now you come to your question. You said, the one who reopens the pyramid could be Enoch or whatever. Why not? Then he returns one day. So I would not be surprised. For me, it's the most normal thing.
And speaking of that, you can say that the pyramids have not been reopened, right? I mean, we have seen part of the pyramids, but there's a lot still hidden within its shape.
There is a lot, you know. It was in the year 823 or 26, somewhere like this, when the Arabian Ibn al-Mas'udi was his name, I guess. He opened for the first time the Great Pyramid, and he found in the pyramid, he said, 3 rooms. One room was covered with all kinds of metal, very thin metal, which they could breathe, and the metal did not rust. In another thing, he found some strange objects which he could not understand. And in the 3rd room, he found 3 sarcophaguses. In every sarcophagus was a body with a long, elongated head, like Osiris. So with a long head. And Saurid, he was so impressed, not Saurid, Al-Mamun was his name. He was so impressed that he was afraid of the gods and of the forefathers, their spirit, their power, etc. He closed everything again, and he even said, I will close it in a way that no later generations will find these rooms again. Until today, we have in the Great Pyramid roughly 3 rooms. It's so-called the Queen's Chamber, the King's Chamber, then we have a subterranean room. But in the subterranean room under the pyramid, it makes no sense. There must be something behind it. In the meantime, by modern technology, modern radar research, we can go through the stones, and we know in the Great Pyramid, it's full of rooms, not only 1 or 2 or 3, full of rooms and shafts. We know the position of them, but nobody has been able to enter there because the shafts are very small. It's about 14 centimeters on one side, so you cannot climb in there. You need modern technology, which means whoever constructed the Great Pyramid some thousands of years ago, he knew about modern technology, and he knew exactly only a later society with high tech is able to enter in there. No other society. Our grandfathers would have no chance to go in these rooms. And these rooms, they contain writings, the knowledge about the extraterrestrials, the truth about our past.
Even in the Bible, I believe, and in the Quran or in the Islamic traditions, there's no record of Enoch's death, but rather Enoch gets raised to the sky.
But Enoch was the author of a book. You see, in the Bible, you read only 2 phrases about Enoch, nothing. It just said Enoch was the 7th patriarch before the great flood, and Enoch was the first human who disappeared from our planet in a fiery chariot. That's all what you read in the Bible, nothing. But Enoch was the author of a book, the Book of Enoch. Some 160 years from now in the past, an English explorer was in Ethiopia. He was looking for God. He entered into a convent, and finally he stood for 30 years in this convent of Ethiopia. He learned the language of the locals, and in the old library of the convent he found a book, the Book of Enoch. He said, hey, I know Enoch from the Bible. Only 2 phrases there. He was the 7th patriarch before a Book of Enoch. So he started to read Enoch, and he was the first who made a translation from old Ethiopian language into English. Later, the English Enoch has been translated into German and different other languages. And Enoch is fascinating because he writes in the first person, the I form. It's a report, it's not a telling story. He did, he said, I here, I said, and he explains exactly what happened. He finally comes up there, you know. The two extraterrestrials, which I've explained before, they ask him if he wants to go up there. And he says yes. He was 12 years old, a boy. Yet, yes. Then he describes, one of the extraterrestrials said, human, you smell terribly. So he was stinking somehow. So they asked him to put all his clothes off. He was completely naked, the boy, and he had to wash him all his body. And then they give him a cream, and they order him to put all this cream over his body. And Enoch make this all over his body, and he smells on his skin. And he, hey, I smelled like one of them. It smelled sweet. Then one of the others give him a suit, a similar suit which they were on. Enoch doesn't know how to put this suit on. The extraterrestrial is explaining. And Enoch, the boy, when he has his suit, he looks like on himself, and he says, I look like one of them. Now he is in the same suit which they have. Then they go up. Enoch does not understand a word. He knows nothing about spaceship. They believe he went up to heaven. It was not heaven. It was simply the orbit. Up there, over the earth. Enoch says, but I wish to fall downward to the planet. Why downward? If somebody wished to fall downward, he must be out of the planet. And he says, the high place on which we stood once turned up and then turned down. Of a sudden, I saw the earth up and I saw the sun down, which means he's in generation spaceship orbiting around his own axis. But he could not know this. He knows nothing about technology. They came into this spaceship. Enoch describes different gardens with fruits and vegetables which he has never seen on earth. Then he comes in a big room, and in the center of a big room is a throne. A throne means a seat, and there the highest is seating. Now when these three people come in, two extraterrestrials and Enoch, three, they come in, the highest stands up, walks a few steps to Enoch, shakes his hand and calls him, welcome here. Now, I was educated as a Christian, I said, and I have spent 6 years of my life in a Christian boarding school led by Jesuits. We had to make translating of the Bible. I know very well what I'm talking about. In the original book of Enoch, the original language, they never used the word God. Only the translation. In the translation, there was God. Enoch always calls him the highest, or he calls them the guardians of the sky. He does not use the word of God. Now 200 years ago, now 160 years ago, when the first time Enoch was translated from Ethiopia to English, the translators there were brilliant people. It was never a conspiracy. These brilliant professors, they made wonderful translations, but they were living in a different time. For their time, 160 years in the back, there was no spaceship, there was no space travel. So they believed that Enoch was taken into the heaven before the great God. That this was just raising up in the heaven, which is a misunderstanding. It was not heaven, it was space. You know, Enoch, before he goes up, the two says, humans, you stink. He has to wash himself. Then they disinfected him with this cream. Then they put him in his spacesuit. Then they go up. Now he comes to garden, which he sees fruits and plants and trees we had never seen on earth, because he's just up there in another world. Then he comes into the great room with the throne, and there is the highest sitting, not God, the highest, and the highest standing up. I myself, I am a deep believer in God. I am one of these figures who pray every evening. I know God exists. We are just nothing compared to God. But the real God, in the case of Enoch, would never have stood up on his throne, walked a few steps to him, shake his hand and say, welcome here. It is all misunderstanding. We have translated it wrongly, not because of conspiracy. Simply the professors had no way. 160 years ago. Now the situation has changed. The spirit of time has changed. It's time we look at all these old writings with new eyes. And then we are ready for the writings in the Great Pyramid.
And then they send Enoch back to teach the people and spread the knowledge.
Like in Greek mythology, Hermes. Enoch and Hermes is him. He always come back to the humans. He always come back and he teach the humans in several belongings, in astronomy, in engineering, etc. And as you mentioned in the beginning, the pharaohs at that time, they knew, and they knew it from Enoch, that a flood would come. They knew it in advance, so they were afraid that all their knowledge would be destroyed. It's all gone by the great flood. That's why they decided to construct a building which would survive the great flood. 2,000 years ago, roughly, 1,800, 1,900 years ago, 2,000 years ago, all the brilliant historians like Diodor of Sicily, Herodotus, Strabon, Plutarch, they were all in Egypt. They were all standing before the Great Pyramid, and they all asked the locals, the Egyptians, who made this building. And the locals 2,000 years ago did not know who made it. They had no answer. They said, we don't know who made it because it was before the Great Flood. So how do we have a name of Cheops? Simply because of Herodotus. Herodotus, in his two books, he clearly makes differences between what he sees, what he smells, what he works, and what they tell him, talking. And in his second book he said, somebody told me that the Great Pyramid was constructed by a pharaoh with the name of Khufu, the Greek word of Cheops, during 20 years with the help of 100,000 slaves. So Herodotus is the only one who brings the name Cheops. All the other historians, they know nothing about Cheops. Diodor of Sicily, who lives later than Herodotus, he used the book of Herodotus about 150 years later, 200 years later. He says Herodotus is wrong with the name of Cheops. It was not Cheops. They don't know who it was because it was before the Great Flood. And I am very, very convinced inside this Great Pyramid or under the pyramid or the Sphinx, we will find all the books with all the information which we need so carefully. By the way, we also need it politically. Just normally I don't make political comments. On this planet, since we live, we humans, we always fight against each other. We always fight because of frontier, mostly because of religion. Only my religion is right, only my, or because of racism. I am black, I am white, I am better. Soon as we understand that we have contact with extraterrestrials, that extraterrestrials observe it, we will learn that we all are the intelligent race, the being of this planet. It doesn't matter if you are black or white or Catholic or Muslim or whatever. We all are the human society. So soon as we learn the contact with extra, all this stupid racism will stop.